What's up everybody, Jesse here, and today I have two very special guests with me to discuss The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves for those watching.
Alright, hi guys, my name's Drake. You can find me at the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Drake Vagabond. I talk about many topics, including Dynasty Warriors and Legend of Zelda stuff too.
And my name's Derek. I run the YouTube channel She Says, and right now we're doing this thing called Boundary Break, where we basically take the camera anywhere we want. We try to find secrets to some of our favorite games.
Alright guys, so it's been a few weeks since E3, and you've had plenty of time to reflect on everything that we've seen. So how did what was shown off of the game compare to what you were expecting? Did it live up to expectations, or did the game turn out to be completely different than what you thought it would be?
I was just going to say that initially, like last year, I saw the original trailer for Breath of the Wild before it was known as Breath of the Wild, and honestly, and this might not be popular for some people, I was not impressed. I didn't like the way the art direction looked. When they announced that it was going to be open world, I was a little nervous, because when you make things too open world, oftentimes the gameplay mechanics get a little bit weak and wonky. But when they revealed the game this year, all of those fears and doubts went completely away. I didn't know what to expect, but I really enjoyed what I saw. I thought that everything looked fantastic.
Yeah, for me, I was more or less in the same boat. I thought the art although I did enjoy the art direction, I did not think that it was like a really very new ground for them to follow, because they've tried the similar art direction before. And, you know, it seems like they were retreading old ground with an open world style. And plus, we barely knew anything about what was going to be in the game. And also the subsequent, gameplay footage, which was basically they had gameplay footage that was filmed off of another camera on another screen. So it was like, okay, and that just made me question the graphical fidelity of it all. And when they dropped that, but then when they dropped this E3 footage, and I was speechless. I was just like, I was gawking the whole time. My jaw was on the floor. I was gonna say, undoubtedly they changed how Link looked from last year to this year. Which one do you prefer more? It's I can see the slight difference of what changes that they made. But it's negligible changes, really. He looks more or less the same he did last year, to me. But the changes that they made, it was just like non-noticeable.
Yeah, for me personally, I don't know exactly what you're referring to, but I personally seen a change from when we seen the first footage of Link being chased by what we now know as the Guardians, and then he rips off the hood and reveals himself to be Link in the blue tunic, and he jumps off the horse and does the whole arrow thing. It looked a lot better in that trailer than it has recently, but we also need to remember that this game is launching on the Wii U and the NX, and we have two separate things about this, because in one interview, I believe it was Aonuma, said that there was going to be almost no difference between the Wii U and the NX version, but then in a later interview, he said the only differences would be visual. So I wonder if the first gameplay footage that we seen was concept for the NX, and then what we got at E3 this year and in the trailers before that is from the Wii U gamepad, or not the gamepad, but the Wii U in general.
So Jesse, you're more impressed with how it looked when it was first revealed? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. If you look at the face, to me there was a lot more detail just in the face alone. And then when we got the second trailer that was like 10 seconds long, that came at the end of the Twilight Princess HD reveal, when I seen that, I noticed not a drastic difference, but enough to where it was still noticeable. It looked like there was less detail on his face, and this could be contributed to just lighting and other situations in the game. What we've seen before could be a cutscene running on the Wii U as opposed to actual gameplay, since you would expect in actual gameplay the camera would just be behind Link's back instead of like zooming around and all that stuff.
So, what Drake said earlier, that it looks a little more similar to how it looked in the past. I do agree with that. I think that, to me personally, maybe I need to go back and check it out again. But when it first revealed, I noticed that they went with a different art style, and I wasn't feeling it personally. But when they revealed the gameplay footage this year, it's like you said. It seemed like Link's image was more closer to home. Like it was almost like it was very similar to like a hybrid between Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. And personally, I'm okay with that. I think it looks good. But maybe I'm just a little too attached to the familiar.
Yeah, I've got the the 2014 footage here. The art style looks a bit more sharper. Like
Yeah.
There's a lot more pointed edges. Doesn't it like, and you compare it to the Breath of the Wild footage, everything's a bit more soft, a bit more round. This one is a bit more sharper design wise.
Yeah, and also one of the reasons that they said the game was delayed was because they were having issues with the game's engine that they were building up. They were creating a brand new physics engine. So one thing that could be contributed to it is the problems they were having with the engine could be that they needed to lower the amount of detail that Link and the environment had, so they could use some more of the power from the CPU and the GPU to actually make this new physics engine work properly.
Yeah, because I can see that in the lighting effects in the old footage compared to the new one. There's a lot more variance of color in how a thing is, like everything is shaded, everything is lighted. There's compared to the current one, because I got two screenshots next to each other, and noticeable difference. But it's if you put them side by side to each other like that. But yeah, it's noticeable.
Alright, so moving on to the next topic, kind of on the same conversation, but what are some other differences that you would expect the Wii U and the NX version to have, whether it be just difference in controls, 720p versus 1080p, or higher frame rate, more detail, or some bonus features like not necessarily DLC, but maybe if you buy the NX version, you'll get an exclusive amiibo that only works for the NX version that does unlock some sort of DLC. What do you guys expect?
Well, this actually reminds me of an interview like Reggie Fils-Aimé said during an interview when they were showcasing Breath of the Wild, is that when the subject of the NX specs came out, Reggie just said that they aren't worried about the teraflops and whatnot. So that tells me, like, I don't know what to take away from that statement that he said. I don't know how much Reggie actually knows, but it seems like the NX, or at least Breath of the Wild, is going to be very similar to what's on the NX and the Wii U. So I'm not expecting too many differences in terms of what we can expect from this particular game.
I do hope that, as far as graphical fidelity goes, that maybe some of the special effects that you guys are mentioning earlier, that would be great. But the one thing that was on my mind when they announced that it was going to be for both consoles is I really hope that they up-res the game. So like there's still aliasing on Wii U games, but if on the NX they can process it better, if there's better anti-aliasing for this game, that would just make it look that much better. And if that ends up being the case, I would absolutely go with the NX version. It doesn't have the touchscreen capabilities that the Wii U has. I love the Wii U's touchscreen capabilities, and with all the extra features added to Breath of the Wild, I'm going to need it. So it just depends on what the NX can do, and what it's going to do better will depend on which version I end up getting.
I feel as though like the NX version might actually, even if like Nintendo isn't all too concerned about the power of the NX, it probably should be a bit more powerful, maybe just a scotch over the Wii U. So I might expect some better better stuff from the NX version. But again, too early to say.
I think personally, it'll be around the level of the PS4 and the Xbox One. Not necessarily the newer versions that they're coming out with, the PlayStation 4K or the Xbox Scorpio, whatever they're calling the nicknames for them. I don't think it'll be around that level, but I think it'll be somewhere around where the current PlayStation 4 and the current Xbox One is. But I do not expect Breath of the Wild to fully take advantage of that. I think it'll primarily look and feel exactly the same as it does in the Wii U version, except it'll be 1080p instead of 720p, and it'll be presumably at 60 frames per second instead of 30. So I think those will be the only realistic changes that we could expect, and there may be more room in there to work with the lighting and particle effects and stuff like that, but that's just getting down to like small details.
When was the last time we had a 60 frames per second Zelda? Was it Majora's Mask on the 3DS?
The 3DS and Wind Waker HD.
Oh, that was 60 frames per second?
Wind Waker. I
Yeah.
totally forgot about Wind Waker.
Twilight-
Wind Waker HD was 60 frames.
Yeah, Twilight Princess HD was not, though, because there was a part in... I watched a video on it. It was the only frame dip that you get in that game is when you're first starting out in the woods and you have to follow the monkey through the poisonous gas to get to
That's
where...
like the worst part.
Yeah, the poisonous gas, instead of being like just colored fog, each little purple dot is being rendered by itself, and because of all of the separate particles in that section of the game, the Twilight Princess HD actually dips down to like the low 20s with the frame rate.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Really? There's... wow. Because I'm in the... I've seen the later parts in the Twilight realm where you see the black fog, or the dark fog, and that's rendering well. So I'm surprised it does for that. I didn't notice it on my first.
Did you? It's probably because Ocarina of Time ran at 20 frames per second, like the one on N64. So we're like used to seeing that. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm used to seeing. Is like I was completely happy with the frame rate on old Nintendo 64 games. So going to newer games that run at 30 frames or 60 frames a second, to me, it's like, unless it's visually noticeable and impacting the game, I could care less. Like, more is better, but I'm not going to complain.
For me,
but Majora's Mask. Yeah, for Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess, there was those were pretty old games. There was a lot of room to upscale. There was plenty of room to play around with, especially with the 3DS.
But with Twilight Princess, one thing to remember is that, and I've said this a few times, and this is just my opinion. We know when Wind Waker HD was first revealed, they said that it came about because they were experimenting with Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and Skyward Sword with the new engine they were building for for Breath of the Wild, which back then it was Zelda Wii U, and they felt Wind Waker looked the best, upscaling and bringing new graphics. So they completely remade Wind Waker to fit in that engine. But whenever Twilight Princess came around, they gave that to another studio to develop. So I think the second studio just took the old engine from Twilight Princess and tried to make the best game that they could, while with Wind Waker HD, Nintendo had access to this brand new engine. So it's really, even though they're both remakes of GameCube games, one is using the new engine and then the other is trying to get the most out of what's possible from that engine that's 10 years old.
Which is such a shame, because it could have benefited so much from the bloom effect.
Right.
It would have looked like that tech demo. It would have been fantastic.
Right. Alright, so moving on to a third topic is with dungeons in this game. There was a rumor before the E3 reveal that we were going to get somewhere around 100 mini dungeons, which we now know are referred to as shrines in the game. And there were going to be 4 actual dungeons that we would be familiar with from like Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. And at first this sounds bad, but then you have to remember that Majora's Mask had 4 main dungeons. So it's not like it would have been something new for the Zelda series, especially with the 100 mini dungeons that I feel would more than make up for it. But with the 100 shrines being confirmed to be true, do you think that the 4 major dungeons is also more than confirmed, or do you think we should still hold out to see if there are more dungeons in the game?
Well, because is from what little we saw of Breath of the Wild, it seemed like there was a lot to. There seems to be more to the game. Like, again, they didn't really show off much, so it's possible that there are like maybe a smaller portion of main dungeons to come up with. Maybe 4 or 6, keep it the traditional 6. But they straight up said that you could go straight to like the final boss and be completely unprepared. So,
Yeah.
and that actually kind of reminded me of letting the moon fall in Majora's Mask, because like that's literally, because in a way the moon is basically the final boss of Majora's Mask, and that just like it just kind of reminded me of going to the final moments of the game, like immediately, like not facing a single dungeon or a boss or solving a puzzle, just go straight to it. And it's interesting how they're playing around with this idea, because it's clear that's somewhat borrowing from a concept from Majora's Mask.
Yeah, and I made a video sort of touching on this topic that I thought personally that them saying you can go from the very beginning of the game to the final boss to more than likely beat the entire game, or at least in the game, was a huge misconception, because I believe that one of the things that we've seen in the game is that when you first start out, you have to talk to the old man, and the Sheikah Slate tablet thing that you have tells you to go to certain locations, and then the old man ends up asking you to do these favors for him, which is basically the opening tutorial for this game. And what it is you're running around to these different shrines located on the map, and as you complete each shrine, he gives you something else. I think if you complete the first shrine, he gives you an outfit that will, or if you make it to the first shrine, he'll give you an outfit that will allow you to go in like the colder areas without losing hearts. And after you beat the 4th shrine, he gives you the paraglider. And Nintendo said that you need the paraglider in order to get off of the Great Plateau. And Ganon, or Calamity Ganon as they're calling him in this game, is located really, really far away from the Great Plateau. So I don't think, since you need the paraglider to get off the Great Plateau, obviously you can't just start the game and then run straight for Ganon. You'll need to do certain things first before you can actually get to him. And then in most Zelda games, they tell you that the only way to defeat Ganon is by the Master Sword or the Silver Arrows. And in this game, if you don't have them, are they completely changing the rules that you can defeat him with almost anything? And even if you can, we see that most of the weapons that you get early in the game can just be broken. If you get one of the items from one of the Bokoblins or something, they'll break after maybe 10 hits, and it'll take more than that to defeat Ganon. So how are you supposed to defeat him, even if you can make it to him, with these weapons that can all potentially break after a few hits?
So my guess, as far as what that statement meant, is I believe it to be true, but let's imagine it like this. Playing the original Zelda 2. Now, if you didn't need tools to get to the very last dungeon of the game, could you honestly beat the game if you started at the very beginning and just walked to the last dungeon? You'd need to level up. You need to prepare yourself for that final conflict. And I think maybe this new game allows you to pull that off to a smaller extent. I think maybe you need the glider, like you said, or some very basic tools. But maybe you can get to the very end of the game by just going straight there from the beginning. But would you be able to beat it? I think that's the question.
Yeah, that's actually very that's a concept that I remember also from Chrono Trigger, where you could go to the final boss and be no matter where you are, what stage of the game, and just like you will be under leveled and be underprepared. So I think that's the concept that they're gonna be going for. The boss is like a set level, and you can't. It's either unbeatable based on where you are, or you just extremely underleveled or under-equipped.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and we see an example in this in the footage that we've seen where the hosts that were showing off Breath of the Wild at E3 during Nintendo Treehouse, they would show you this enemy called the something steep, or the rock enemy that would kind of come up.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
they said that you may not be able to defeat him at first, but you can go collect items, build your strength up, and come back with more powerful weapons. And
did you see the video of someone actually beating him with okay. Yeah, that was on Zelda Informer, I think.
Yeah, so what I'm thinking is, if you're very skilled, then you can defeat the rock steep, or whatever its name is. But for most people, that in itself, and that's an enemy that you can see within like the first couple of minutes of playing the game. So if that enemy is more powerful, or too powerful for most beginning players, then how does that compare to not just a boss, but potentially a boss that more than likely would be able to kill you with just one hit? And not only that, but most fights with Ganon, or the in-game boss in a Zelda game, there's 2, 3, sometimes 4 different fights or stages in that fight. Like with Ganon in Twilight Princess, you had to fight against the possessed Zelda, then you fought against Beast Ganon, and then you rode on horseback to fight against actual Ganondorf.
I hope that with the last boss that you can potentially beat the last boss with no equipment, but I hope that by collecting all of the equipment that you can get within the game makes it that much easier. Like, if I'm trying to like use my imagination here, but like imagine if the last boss you could climb up the boss, but that makes it makes you that much more vulnerable to get hit, as opposed to having like a grapple hook and like making your way up to the top of whatever that much quicker.
Right.
I think that would be so cool. Like if you could beat the game without the equipment, but the equipment helps you in aiding the end of the game.
Yeah, that reminds me sort of, this goes back to Majora's Mask again. If you make it to the main boss without completing all of the side quests, you'll be able to fight him like you would normally. But if you complete all the side quests and you get all of the masks, then in return you get the Fierce Deity mask, which makes it much easier.
Yeah,
For sure. Yep. But are we still on the topic of the 4 dungeons? 'Cause,
Yeah. But
I was just gonna give my 2 cents there. I just think that you're right. Majora's Mask has done that in the past, but I mean, I think I can speak for anybody and say that if we can get more dungeons, I mean, wouldn't that be so much better?
Yeah,
I mean, Majora's Mask was great, but how can you not want more of a good thing, right?
Right.
they're taking the Super Mario 3D 3D Land approach of just giving you like multiple levels to just go to.
Oh no!
Just like this game will get your money's worth.
You just go on a grid. I would not be happy about that.
Yeah.
Not that
Okay.
in terms of that, but like more like they said, Nintendo's all about the content, and I think the Mario games have actually influenced how they approach creating the game mechanically.
Yeah.
And so they're just like creating more, because the last few Mario games, there's a lot of levels and there's a lot of stuff to do. So I guess they're trying to get the same effect with the new Zelda game, with Breath of the Wild.
Oh, okay.
It's my 2 cents on that, because Nintendo likes to do more and more with each installment of their new game. So You know, and in terms of Zelda games, this is the biggest.
Oh, for sure.